Welcome back to the channel. Wendy Renee here. So excited to have you back. Our next guest is Joe and Tabitha Graciano. Married for 18 years, Joe was a coordinator of body of elders in his congregation, and Tabitha was his loving, supportive wife at his side. The story of their awakening is pretty interesting, as they did it at the same exact time and they were doing research together. You're going to hear about how they unraveled indoctrination in their children and their best tips if you too are struggling with perhaps being a PMO, or maybe you are slowly unraveling indoctrination and you want to talk to your spouse about it. They have a treasure trove of advice and firsthand experience and what they have gone through in this organization. So let's let them tell their story. Let's go. Before we get into it, I want to thank you so much for subscribing. It just means that more and more people are hopping onto the fact that, hey, you know what? There is understanding and love and compassion and joy and mindfulness and great things on the other side of high control religion and narcissistic abuse. Be sure to check out our TikTok channel where we have some really great conversations going on in the comments. We're so excited to have Tabitha and Joe Graciano on our show. And for the sake of the audience, you guys, why don't you give a little bit of your background and help us get to know you a bit?
Girls first.
Okay. I'm a mom, and I'm a student, and I was born in multiple generations of witnesses on both sides of my family. Was in the organization all the way up until a couple of years ago. And now I'm just living my best life. So that's me.
Well, same here. I wasn't born in. I was baptized in the Catholic religion, but we never went to church. So the organization was the only real religion that I did anything in.
And, were you young when your family converted and brought you into it?
Well, it was just my mom. My father never took to the religion, the Jehovah's Witness religion. He was still Catholic, so that's as far as growing up. You can see how that could cause difficulties in life in general, just growing up.
Sure.
Having an unbelieving father,
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm really thankful that you guys came on the show, because both of you have not only a story as a couple, but individual stories as well. So why don't we start off with what experience you've had, your like JW resume, so to speak, of your experience in the organization, and maybe that can lead into your wake up story.
I actually never served as a pioneer, well, I guess that's the only thing a sister can really serve as, right?
All right. Yeah. And a wife.
Yeah. I
served as a
wife. So I auxiliaried a lot. I didn't get baptized till I was about 14 or 15, something like that. I don't want to say too much about my parents, just because I'm still really trying to hold on to those relationships and trying to find a way to have healthy relationships with both my parents outside of religion.
So they're still in then?
They are both still in. They're divorced, but they're in separately. But my mom served as a regular pioneer for a lot of my youth. My dad never had any privileges. He's a very genuine person, though. But really, I mean, I just tried to be a good person. I tried to be the best version of myself. Always striving to be better. Always feeling like I'm just not good enough. I was never the mom that could get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and pack my vehicle with my kids and snacks and go pioneering all day. I just couldn't do it. I mean, I wanted to, but I always just felt like, I don't know, I couldn't. Anyway, so I supported Joe in all of his efforts to help the congregation. He was a ministerial servant for a long time, so whatever sacrifices I could make to further that, you know, I did. And then when he was an elder, again, you know, I supported that. I was a good elder's wife, I think. Like, I was never asking him what happened at your elders meetings, or I never asked for gossip or anything like that. And I tried to be friends with everybody, even though that friendship was, like, I feel like rejected a lot. Because even within the organization, you know, there's cliques and people just don't mesh all the time. And you know what? That's okay.
There's no cliques.
Well, I want to go back a minute because one of the things that you and I bonded over was motherhood and being in this organization and the intense pressure that is put on us to have this certain look of, look, I could do it all. I can go out in service and, like you said, pack all the snacks. And my kids were the types who were normal toddlers, and they would be unruly during the meetings. And then I became this person that I didn't recognize. I would suddenly discipline them for being normal toddlers. And there were these other women who just looked like they were perfectly coiffed and like not a care in their world. And I'm just sort of like, what am I doing wrong? And so I think that's not spoken. Well, that's how it is in the world itself and society itself, but especially in the organization, there's enough pressure on us as women and then moms, and we're just not doing enough. And then it's our fault if our kids are not getting baptized on time or early enough, or it's just always this never ending hamster wheel of pressure and supposed to be-ism.
And we always needed to look happy doing all.
Yes, you have to put on that face.
Yes,
you know.
because if you showed the stress that a mom feels, it's like, well, you need to pray about it. Well, you need to do this.
The Holy Spirit isn't operating in your life.
Exactly. And so yeah, you kind of always had to keep up this appearance. And that's kind of, Joe and I were touching on that earlier about how I wanted to be this better version of myself. I wanted to be that mom that had it together, or that wife that had it together, and, you know, but in my opinion, the organization, their standards, what they consider qualities in a person actually makes you kind of a worse person. At least it did for me. It brought out traits in me that I didn't like, and that I felt like I was working against myself. I knew in my head somewhere, or in my heart somewhere, what it took to be a good person, a good mom, a good wife, a good friend, a good daughter, all of that. But I could never get there because I didn't have the tools and the support system needed to do that. And it wasn't until leaving that I definitely feel like I'm on that road now to being a very true version of myself and a better version of myself. So yeah, as a mom, you know, we already have all this weight, even in the world outside of religion, you know, there's stress and weight as a mom to do the best for your kids. It's unnecessary what the organization puts on you as a woman.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. And especially I didn't have this experience, but your experience as being the wife of a husband who had position in the congregation. So then you had another layer of pressure added on to you I mean, even if the kids, I have friends who were wives of men with position in the congregation. And even if the kids were unruly, all eyes were always on them, you know, because their husband was important. I'm sorry?
Like being under a magnifying glass.
Yeah, so I want you guys to talk about that a little bit. You know, Joe, feel free to chime in too with the things you saw in the congregation and your wake up story.
So Joe's Witness religion is the only one I ever knew. And I was young when my mom started attending the meetings and started studying with our family. In fact, Tabitha,
that's how we met.
Her mom, the sister that was studying with my mom, who ended up studying with our family. They would come and study with us. My wife and her mom, my mother-in-law now, will come and study the Bible with us and our family.
Wow.
So, and she was 7, and I was 12 or 13. So that's how we first met. You know, so I took on. We were in the Spanish congregation.
He was.
I'm sorry. Me and my mom and my sister were in the Spanish congregation. So I do have a sibling. I have a sister who's older. So we were studying in Spanish, and the sister who was studying with us moved to the English, and so Mom went ahead and moved to the English too. And that's kind of when I skyrocketed in my in the religion. When we switched from Spanish to English, I took it, and I ran with it, and I became this by the book, marching orders taking man. And
I was just gonna say that was as a JW girl, that was one of the major things that attracted me to him was, you know, there were all these young people in the congregation, and you know, we would see them, some living double lives, or just not reaching out in the congregation to do a lot, right? And so they just didn't seem like a spiritual man. And Joe was like the ultimate spiritual man. He was always pioneering, he was always reaching out, giving talks. He was serious about the truth. He was very studious. And so, yeah, that was definitely a major attraction.
And there's also a lot of pressure on both sides too. There's pressure on
way too.
Well, no, I was totally rebellious.
Well, you know, as women in the organization, we are trained that our spirituality is reflected on the kind of man that we choose, right? We're not taught to look for kindness and longevity and whether or not he can, you know, hold a job or things like that. No, we're taught, you know, if he's not spiritual, if he doesn't love God before you, he's not going to love you. So if he's not reaching for congregational status, he's not good enough. So there's so much of this not good enough on both sides of the spectrum. So you guys meet, you get married, he has all these positions in the congregation, then what happens?
I mean, we had our son. Mm-hmm. Our son is now 12, fixing to be 13.
Yeah, we were married for 5 years, and then we had Luke.
Uh-huh. And we just continued in the congregation. And we moved around for work circumstances and so on. And we made friends, you know, in whatever congregation we were in. I've got to stop doing those air quotes. It's like so annoying.
No, but it makes sense. Yeah.
But it's hard to, you know, it's hard to say friends when.
Right.
Anyway, so we just kept going. And as I can say for me, as I got older and I was a mom, I really tried to make the religion very real to me. And I tried to just jump in wholeheartedly because like I mentioned, as a youth, I always felt that not good enough. And I just like, I couldn't ever forgive myself for things, or I felt like, how could Jehovah forgive me? And how could he want me here? But I had to let that go because, you know, they say, let it go. So I really tried to just embrace the organization and the quote unquote truth. And we focused on that, and we just focused on being what we thought was good, but we focused on being good Jehovah's Witnesses. And it wasn't until a couple years ago. So throughout the years, I had always heard about cases in the news having to do with lawsuits and like CSA issues, but I would kind of just brush them off as not that they couldn't be real, but that they were, you know, it's a fluke. That's one weird thing that happened in a congregation somewhere, and it wasn't commonplace. So when I saw a news article that talked about how bad the CSA issue is in the organization and the database of child molesters and the Australian Royal Commission, I was dumbfounded. And this was a news article, so I didn't feel like I was reading anything apostate. It was just a news article. And so I took that to Joe like, hey, what is this? What is the organization's stance on child abuse? If a family comes to you, or if a child comes to you and says that they've been abused, what are you going to do as an elder? What is the protocol? And he provided me with the official letter from the organization that says we abhor child abuse, but they never say anything about, of course, we report it to the authorities. And he himself said that he would feel obligated to report, but that wasn't the organization's stance. And then I questioned, I said, okay, so what is the first thing you do? And the answer came that the first phone call you make as an elder is to the organization, to the legal department. And I thought, wow, that is shady. That is like a company that just wants to cover their own, butt. And that's how is that God's organization? How is that if this is God's organization, shouldn't they be above man's rules? Shouldn't they, in the way that if anybody can handle CSA, the organization should handle it perfectly, right? Because this is God's organization. How could they let children suffer, victims?
Such a good point. Yeah.
And so if anybody's going to handle it right, it's going to be them. And the answers I was getting, it didn't equate to that. It fell short big time. And as a parent, as a mother, I could not accept that answer with grace. Like, it wasn't like, okay, if that's the answer, that's good enough for me. It was like, okay, that answer is very unsatisfying. It's very not okay. And I don't want to cause waves. I mean, this is my faith. This is our faith. Our family is built on this JW foundation. I wasn't about to say, we're going to uproot it over this,
Yeah.
But it shook me. It shook me.
And previous to this point, to what you said earlier, you were just trying to be a good person, trying to be a good witness, wife, and mother. Were you ever the type before to ask questions, or did you just kind of have this blind faith that they were always doing everything right, even things you didn't really know about?
There were definitely times where I questioned things in my head. Mm-hmm. There would be times that I would be sitting at a convention, hearing a talk, or an assembly, and hearing a talk, and the brother would say something so bizarre or so morally wrong. And I would sit there and I literally would look around like, am I the only one hearing this? This sounds ugly. This doesn't sound nice.
And all you see is bobblehead dolls everywhere.
Yes, right. That's exactly it. Yes.
Right. And then you think to yourself, wow, I must be having a rebellious spirit. I need to check myself. I need to blindly follow. I need to have that strong faith that I don't need evidence. I don't need good answers, So I would talk myself out of questioning. So the way I've explained it to Joe is, it's like I would have a question, but I never allowed myself to find the answer.
Right.
Because that wasn't good, right? That made you kind of a bad person or apostate-like. So I would just put it away, and you know what? I trust the brothers. I trust the organization. I trust the governing body, and I'm just going to be quiet and go with the flow.
And meanwhile, in every other facet of your life, are you the type to give yourself permission to research, whether it's about mom stuff or whatever it is? You're a researcher.
Avid researcher.
Oh,
yeah, right? Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm all about critical thinking and open talk and honesty and transparency. So in this one aspect of life, religion, that controls so much of our lifestyle, I shut that down.
She's the biggest communicator in our family.
I'm majoring in communication, so yes.
I can relate to that. Joe, when she brought this to you as an elder, she brings how CSA is handled to you. What was that like for you, as not only as a father, but as someone who believed it was the truth at the time? Was there any inner struggle? What was that like for you to explain this to her, that there was no actual recourse?
Well, I mean, it was an awkward topic to, I guess, to peer into and to not discuss, but just focus on, because it didn't feel right serving as an elder, because in our congregation we had 8 in our congregation who were convicted.
What?
Yeah, 8.
Wow.
And the majority of the congregation had no idea. And in each individual case, and the documents, I read and I knew of, nowhere did it say to advise the parents and to be careful, but basically just for as brothers, as elders, to look on the lookout for these ones whenever they do come. And I took it upon myself as a coordinator to make sure that every other Thursday night meeting, included in the announcements, was to make sure and accompany your child to the restroom. I always made sure that that line and that announcement wasn't a direction from the branch for that announcement to be placed in there. I made the decision, and it wasn't no one else that told me to do it. I did it because it's like, I have kids. There's 8 of these monsters in our congregation.
They're allowed to just roam around freely too.
That's the least I can do. Yeah, that's the least I can do from the podium,
right,
to make sure and protect the kids,
right,
and advise the parents. And yeah, so
I think that was
bizarre.
That was very out of character for Joe. Well, let me explain that. Joe was super by the book, like he mentioned. He tried to follow the directions to a T. And like he mentioned, this wasn't direction from the branch to make that announcement. But that's the goodness in him, the kindness in him. He knew it raised that moral red flag that, hey, I don't, not only does he not want to be responsible for something happening to a child, he doesn't want that to happen, but, he wasn't telling the congregation couldn't know all these details. So it's like he just had to do the best he could to try to help,
sure,
control that issue.
Right.
And
it's the struggle of doing things by the book and the struggle of being a good human. Did you get pushback from the elders for those kinds of announcements? Was there ever? No. Oh, good.
No,
because you're the coordinator.
Right. So they didn't. No, I didn't hear no.
Okay.
In fact, I don't even think they even thought about it.
Wow. Okay.
So they understood
Mm-hmm.
why I decided to put that in there. They understood. They did, because they knew. They knew too. We all did.
Wow.
But the CSA issue, and that's the thing. After the fact, now that we're out, and the shepherding book, not giving the direction to call the police. But what really just aggravates me is knowing that in this same book, it says that if there's any kind of vandalism or theft in the Kingdom Home, it says to call the authorities. I'm thinking, you seriously give a direction in calling the authorities for the Kingdom Hall being vandalized or being broken in, or people stealing something from the Kingdom Hall. Call the authorities. But if you receive a report of a child getting molested, you call the branch office. And I just don't understand.
They care more about their property than they do.
Exactly. It's not a living, breathing thing here. We're not talking about a life. We're talking about a physical, material possession that the congregation, that the organization has.
Disgusting. That's disgusting.
Wow. It's just really disgusting.
So were you both waking up at the same time then at this point?
So when I came to Joe with that,
she was more.
Well, yeah. I wasn't waking up. It just shook me.
Yeah.
And he was still an elder, but it was kind of interesting because when this came up, he was in the process of stepping down. Yeah. And he was stepping down simply because he was burned out. He was overworked.
Too much.
And so he was stepping down. I read that news article. We talked about the CSA issue in the congregation, how it's handled. And after he stepped down, that bothered us so much. I came to him and I said, how can we go in service and tell people that this is God's organization, that this is, the safest place to be. This place has the truth and the answers, and it's full of love, and the brotherhood is amazing. When we know this is going on, I can't do that. I cannot go and try to bring families into this organization knowing the ugliness that they have piled up behind the curtain. I just can't.
Right.
And so both of us as parents, we struggled with that. And so after he stepped down, we allowed ourselves to start researching.
So as an elder, were you weren't aware of what was going on, of the lawsuits and everything, but you were
I
aware
had
of
no idea.
but you were aware of 8 convicted in your congregation.
I was aware of 8 in the congregation that were, yes, convicted, and they were pedophiles. They were on. I mean, you there's websites where you can check to see where pedophiles live. And they were there, and they were on that website. So initially, what really caught my attention first, and why I started doing even deeper research into the CSA issue, was when I saw the video of Tony Morris buying liquor at the liquor store. That caught my attention, because I'm like, what is this? And so if this is going on and it's on video, what else is going on?
Can I say something about that? I think that for a lot of people, that might not be a big issue that he went and bought alcohol. But I think that in our culture, where we live at, the area we live at, we live in a very conservative area. And I'm talking about like the witnesses in our area. And Joe, coming from the background that he has in the Hispanic world, seeing a brother do that, that's a big deal. That really? Going out and buying that much alcohol.
And that's the thing. I said to myself, if I, as an elder, were pictured in a liquor store buying that much liquor, and someone in the congregation saw me, you better believe that I was going to be questioned about it once it worked.
Thank you for bringing attention to that, because I do know a lot of people that think, what's the big deal? But you know what? You're right.
In all, like Tabitha said, it all depends where you are, the culture, and all that. But yeah, it would have been a big deal. And so that's why it caught my attention, because here we have a governing body member. And so that kind of triggered my thinking into saying, well, I know Tabitha's been talking about these court cases that she's been reading on the news. And so, doing further research into not just the whole liquor deal, but the CSA deal, it opened the door to it being okay, and let's just see where this takes us. And one thing that her and I both agreed on was to do individual research, do research together, and at the same time ignore opinion, only focus on black and white factual evidence that will help us understand what this nonsense that we're reading about going on behind the curtain. And the reason why is because we spent 30 plus years of our life in this organization, in this faith. The last thing we're going to do is remove ourselves from it based on someone's opinion.
Right. Or if your feelings got hurt.
Right.
This is why I tell people, if you're going to wake up, like, it's got to be something powerful, because if your feelings are hurt, or if it's just something momentary, there's a very strong chance of being pulled back in.
Yeah, and that's what we did. And I think we did such a great job, because we were just every day, it was unbelievable information that we were able to turn up outside of the Watchtower publications, and stuff that you will never see on JW News.
So you teamed up and did it together.
Yeah. So we would actually have days where we wouldn't even talk about it, because like he would do his research, I would do mine, and it was like we needed that time to think and digest what we were researching, and then we'd come together and we'd share what we learned, how we felt about it, and there are things we would look in together. So I think we I think we did that pretty well. And like Joe said, we focused on facts and real evidence and not so much opinion. At that time, I allowed myself to finally watch that Leah Remini special on the witnesses. And my heart broke for those people. And I cried my eyes out. But still, that wasn't something that I said, you know, yeah, this isn't the truth, because it was people's personal experiences. And I felt like if I was willing to leave over someone else's experience, then, you know, was my faith really there? So, and I did feel like my faith was very solid and connected to the religion. So I needed to find facts. I needed, you know, to turn your life upside down. And then one of the reasons I had reached out to you was because another really big part of that was we have a family. And even though our daughter at the time was a baby, our son was 10.
He was getting ready to get baptized.
He was getting ready to get baptized. He was a little mini elder. He loved service. Yeah. You know, he was very devout. And so I wasn't about to turn his world upside down also based on anyone's emotions or personal experience.
He had already met with 2 brothers about starting the questions for baptism.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's how close we got to.
So in addition to unraveling indoctrination in your minds, you're also unraveling it in a child's mind.
Yes.
And you know, and double duty for you too. So you did this after you stepped down for personal reasons. And how did they feel about you stepping down? Was that a challenge for you?
Man, you know,
that was really sad.
It was sad. It was sad because there was a lot of the rumor mill started up.
Of course.
A lot of blame, I think, was pointed at Tabitha. Not a lot, but some. Not a lot.
Always the wife.
So used to it.
Some blame. Some of the blame was obviously directed at Tabitha, and some they just had no idea what was going on. Some blame they understood. You know, I had a lot on my plate or whatever. But the brothers, they were okay with it. But I believe that the true colors came out when the announcement was made. When the announcement was made, not a single one came up to me, shook my hand, said thank you for everything you've done. We appreciate everything. We look forward to hopefully you coming back. It was a pretty cold night.
The no longer an elder announcement, or
right? The no longer elder announcement. Like, I would have expected that these brothers that he served with, that he's gone through things with, would come up to him and hug him and say, it's okay. You have a family. You have a full-time job. You have a lot on your plate. We get it. Because you know what? These brothers that he served with were older brothers who already had their families, and their families were grown. They should know, as men, the stress or the weight that comes with being a good family man, providing for your family. You know, they should know. Right. So shame on them for how they treated my husband after that. Like he said, it was very cold. They gave him the cold shoulder, walked right by him. And it was hard for him to step down because at the time we were preemie. We felt bad, you know, that he was stepping down, but we knew that it was right for our family. You know, we knew that our family needed that attention. So I was grossed out by the way they treated him afterwards.
And interestingly, that's what makes you a good wife. Now, what did they expect you to do? Keep him as an elder because it looks good, because it's good for the congregation, or scripturally keep putting your family first is what the Bible tells us to do?
Yeah,
right?
That's what I told them. I said, this is, I think I've reached a point in my life where I need to focus more on my family than the congregation, because I can't do both right now. I can't. It's getting to me. I'm getting stressed out, and there's just too much. And they've, I think they made suggestions about taking responsibilities away and lightening my load, is what they would call it. Mm-hmm. But I told them, I said, why would I do that and just carry the title without the work.
Right.
I don't want. I'm not going to do that.
Right. So they wanted to say, stay with the elder title, and we'll take over your workload.
Wow.
But that's not the point. He's serving the congregation. You know,
Right.
That's what he wanted to do. He was being a very genuine person. And, you know, he spent so many hours trying to help people. And just the zero appreciation, I think, specifically from the other elders on the elder body. And to take it further, when we kind of started missing meetings because we were waking up and doing our research, they would go up to my mother-in-law, who was in the same congregation, and there were ugly comments made about us, but specifically about him. And I mean, specifically about me too, but after everything he did for the congregation, to go up a month later to his mother and say something ugly, you know, I just don't understand how that's Christian.
It's not, and there's no surprise there. The smear campaign is very part and parcel for people who are announced, and that's what they do is they leave it open to the rumor mills, like so and so is no longer an elder, no longer a pioneer, so and so is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses, when really they could have stepped down or disassociated themselves. They leave it open to interpretation for a reason, because that's what narcissists do. They want people to talk and think about it, and it instills fear in the rest of the congregation to not do that.
Yes, there you go.
Right. They don't want people to. Well, I don't want to be talked about, so I'm gonna stay the course. I'm gonna continue to make it look good so that I'm not announced, so it doesn't look bad for me.
It's an organization, I believe, built by narcissists, and just the way things are run.
Right.
It's not about love. It's
right.
not.
No, definitely not. So after, go ahead, continue.
I was just gonna say so. Oh yeah, we were talking about waking up our son, right? Is that where we were going?
Sure. Yeah, we can go there.
So
that's a big issue for a lot of parents too.
Yeah.
Tabitha, that's something else. You and I, our kids are the same ages, and yeah, that's a big thing. You know.
So he stepped down. We started waking up, and this is all within like a month or two time period.
No, when we were doing our research, he had no idea.
Right.
Luke didn't know that we were going in this direction. We didn't want to do that because he's a kid. He's 12. He was 10. He was 10 at the time. So we were very careful in how we had to be very careful when we're doing our research. And of course, ultimately, when it came time to let him know our decision, it had to be a gentle way of communicating that.
So while we were waking up, there were a couple meetings that we went to, but going to the meetings when you're waking up is so hard because to sit there and hear all of the lies and all of the manipulation, and now you're using your critical thinking skills, and now you're recognizing the manipulation. It just
it was hard,
very difficult. So we started missing meetings, and Luke, he was, like I said, very devout. So he would start questioning, "Hey, when are we going back to the Kingdom Hall? I miss going to the Kingdom Hall."
And you described him as a sensitive soul too.
Oh yes, he is. He is emotional and very in tune with feelings, his own, other, very observant. So he started asking questions, and we really started focusing on family time, on quality family time. And so that was the perfect excuse, and it was a very healing thing to do, to just start spending time together as a family. We would go fishing, or we would go for rides, or we would, go and sit at the river. And we actually, just as a side note, after we left, those next few months, things just started working out. Like, we bought a house finally. And so we've been working on our house, while we're, kind of staying away and stuff. And
so you're waking up your son, and
so we're waking up our son. So when we finally were ready to say, okay, we're done. We're not going back. We know this is the right decision.
We left the CO's visit.
Oh yeah, we left during the CO's visit. Oh my gosh.
Go out with a bang. Go out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We actually left like halfway through the meeting because we were just, So anyway,
we're done.
so we sat Luke down, and knowing just because we know our son and what he can handle, what we brought up to him was the Australian Royal Commission. Very lightly, we covered the CSA issue.
To where a 10-year-old can understand.
Right. Age appropriate. Sure.
Age appropriate. Sure. But we knew that was something that he would connect with as just because of how his mind works.
Yeah.
So we explained that one thing to him, and we said we cannot be a part of it. And one thing I had mentioned to you in our discussions was that before we told Luke, I told Joe one night, I said, if you think this is the truth, even after everything we've learned, if you think this is the right thing to do and how we need to raise our family, I can put everything out of my mind and pretend I just didn't read it and didn't learn it, and I will put it to the side and we will go forward.
Wow, Joe, that must have been a lot for you to hear too.
Yeah, but right away I told her, well, it's not about what you want. Mm-hmm. It's not about what I want. Mm-hmm. It's about doing what's right, and it's about standing up for our morals.
Right. And we couldn't be supporting all the disgusting things we were finding out. So it was like they left us no choice, and yet it was the best choice because we did stand up for, what is right. So we talked to Luke about the CSA issue, and that was enough for him to say, wow, that's disgusting. I don't want to be a part of that either. We didn't start talking about like holidays and stuff because
it was a gradual process.
It was a gradual process. Yeah, we would talk about birthdays. I asked him one time, if you could celebrate any holiday, what would it be? And my son said Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day because it's about family and love and food.
Oh my God, what a sweet kid.
So, so we started talking about, as witnesses, why did we think that was wrong? And because we couldn't really answer those questions in a good way.
We used a dry erase board. I used a dry erase board to kind of show him as a family. I used dots, and I put a circle for the organization. I put a bunch of dots with a bunch of people in the organization, and I put our dots, which is bigger, in the circle. And then I took our dots out of the circle and I said, this is us. We're no longer going to be in this circle. We're going to be in our own family circle. Mm-hmm. Wow. And at the time we were still, believing in God and Jesus and that arrangement in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And so I drew a square with Jehovah and Jesus with lines, and then the 4 dots, a line from Jesus to us. And I said, this is how we're going to be living. This is how we're thinking about living now. Instead of having to go through an organization to get to God, this is how we're thinking about doing it. And so using visual aid for him really helped him to not get so worrisome about what's going to happen now.
Right.
Because he completely understood. And it was great to do that.
It was a really good
especially because Armageddon, the fear of Armageddon starts at that age, the fear of being destroyed.
Yes.
Right. He seems like he'd feel responsible too to possibly continue.
Yeah, he would get sick to his stomach about the whole Russian.
Yes.
He literally
he would throw up because he would get so nervous and worried about Armageddon and all that. So
I mean, the things we expose our kids to by those talks are things I don't even let them watch on Netflix or TV.
Yeah.
I remember one convention, they were so graphic, sexually explicit and graphic I think it was my last convention was 2016, I think. And it was graphic. And I said to my friend, my kids were only, I think 4 and 5 at the time. I said, I don't really this is not age appropriate for them. Like, well, where else do you want them to learn it from? Like me, when it's
Yeah.
when it's time, they,
Mhm.
you know. So yeah, it was a lot, and I always felt like I was shielding them from terror, and losing family that aren't witnesses. They're going to be destroyed. Like, this is a lot for these little kids to
Yes.
believe. Yeah.
It stirs up a lot of anxiety, I think, in children.
Mhm.
And then they have to live with that. And then it becomes normal that they have all this anxiety and panic. And so undoing that for a
Mhm.
child is so healthy, so productive, and it's a gift for them.
And
But
also seeing humility, that your parents are human. For me, it was, listen, we were wrong in believing this. And, you know, I was little when I was told it was the right thing to do. So I may be taller and older than you, but you know what? I've only been a parent for as long as you've been alive. So we're going to try something different, you know?
yeah,
And they saw me as a human being. I make mistakes too, you know, and
yeah,
that includes religion. Sometimes for my kid, I had to be a little not so dogmatic because they were just leaving dogma, you know?
yes. So that communication, being transparent, and like you said, being humble as a parent, that was essential for him to wake up in a healthy way.
Wow.
So we've been able to evolve kind of as a family in our beliefs. Anytime Joe or I have thoughts about the afterlife or a creator or Jesus and, you know, heaven and all of that, right? What religion is right? Is there a true religion? We talk about it as a family. You know, we include him in that conversation because he is a thinker. And it's important for us, for his mind to grow and not to just leave him in one spot.
Exactly. And, you know, I do the same thing. My son asks me questions. I don't know, Gideon, what do you think? What do you think what
Yeah.
happens when people die? And he'll go off like, oh, they're probably on roller coasters and this, you know, and I love hearing the way that they think of things. And
Mhm.
interestingly, I mean, I'm not right all the time. And as a witness, I believed I was right all the time. So even now I feel like I'm kind of okay with not knowing, you know, I'm kind of
Yes,
okay with maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm not. And who knows? That's what makes life so interesting, you know?
yes.
Yeah.
We've adopted a lot of that kind of thinking.
Mhm.
And it's really, like you said, nice to see our children. It's really good to see Luke having his own journey of spirituality or non-spirituality or whatever you want to call it. We're not going to put him in a box with things that we don't have definite answers for. So that's been a really good process. Something else that's been really nice is that, well, for Joe, his sister, um, she was baptized, but she left, faded away
Mhm.
um, as an adult. And when we were witnesses, because of Joe's privileges or whatever you want to call them, we could never have a really good bond with her and her family. And that was difficult because we wanted to, like we wanted to. And there were times we would go and be with the family and it felt inside, it felt so good. But like for me as a somebody who grew up, you know, J-Dub, and knowing that I'm associating with somebody that's bad association,
Yeah.
I always felt bad afterwards. Like I felt good in the moment,
It
and
didn't
they're
look
good
good.
people. They're
Yeah.
good people. It felt
Right.
good to be with family, but it's like this internal struggle where your Jehovah's Witness mind is like, no, that was really bad of you.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing this, and we would stay away from them,
Wow.
and it hurt. I'm sure it caused her and her family pain, you know, and it caused us pain. So we've been able to mend those relationships, and it's been so good.
Yeah.
Like,
When we got out of, one of the first things we did was we went over to their house and I apologized to my sister for how I treated her and how I shunned her basically.
Yeah.
And it was an inhumane thing to do. And at the time, you know, if there's any regret, that's one of them. You know, and my father too. I regret not having in growing up. Now we have everything is great because I spent so much time, as much time as I could with my father. But growing up, I think we could have spent more time with him, more time being with my father, and just learning more from him instead of being on service on Saturday mornings where I missed out on all that time, where I could have learned so much.
Or always thinking that, oh, my family's going to die at Armageddon. Like, that's such an ugly thing to live with, you know? So,
It's so interesting that you say this. My father's not a witness either, and he's 70, and I kept him at arm's length my whole life because I believed he was going to be
Yeah,
destroyed. And and I saw my kids. I was teaching them to do the same thing, and I just didn't want to repeat that toxicity
yeah,
going forward. And so, yeah, Tabitha, you also mentioned, you know, forming new relationships with people who weren't witnesses, and you learning more about your upbringing and who you were as a kid by talking to your family who wasn't witnesses growing up.
right. So on my side as well, I have an uncle and a couple of cousins that are not witnesses who I have been able to get reacquainted with, and it's been so good. It's been so positive because I have several witness cousins who live far away from me, but we never made the effort to do Zooms together or to get, to get together.
get together.
We never made that effort, even though it was like, oh, those are my witness cousins and we have the most important thing in common. We didn't really take interest in each other's lives the way that humans need to do to be healthy and productive. Like, we didn't do that. And now I have that with my couple of cousins and my uncle. I have this relationship that we're building, and we stay in touch, and we do Zooms together and check in on everybody, and that is so beautiful.
Well, I've
And
noticed that witnesses and non-witness, the difference between my witness family and my non-witness family is the appreciation of time. In my non-witness family, they don't know what the future holds, so they hold on to those moments. They hold on to family while they still have them.
yes,
My witness family, it's this whole, well, we have the new system to do that. Plenty of time. Like they don't really appreciate what they have while they have it, even though they say they do. And it's crazy how you don't realize it while you're on the inside.
exactly. I
Mhm.
feel that big time, like with
Mhm.
my dad. I love my dad so much, but he rejects me and my family. Well, not my kids so much, but definitely Joe and I. And it's like I can feel that he wants to spend time with us. He wants to be with his family, but he has this internal struggle and he thinks it's right to stay away from us. And it's like we always had that, well, we're not going to get together. We're not going to make it a point to do this together because that's for the new system. And the new system will have time. And exactly like you said,
Mhm.
now with my non-witness family, no, let's get together. Let's spend 2 or 3 hours catching up
Right.
because it's important to have that memory because
Right.
this is our life right now.
This is
And
now. This is
make
all we have. Yes.
yeah,
yeah,
And when you think in the in terms of the organization, when you think this is what we have, being mindful and living in the present, that's almost anti JW rhetoric if you're not careful. Like the Epicurean philosophy, eat, drink, for tomorrow we die. I remember that was kind of drilled into my head. Like, no, it's not. Don't be so Epicurean. It's not about today or tomorrow. It's we're gonna live forever, so we have time. Um,
hmm
Joe, so are you guys disfellowshipped or disassociated, or are the elders coming after you? What does that
well,
look like for you now?
after this video,
That
we'll
well,
see.
I was wondering, how are
and that's
yeah.
okay. I mean,
We're not,
we don't know.
yeah.
I don't
Mhm.
know if we've been disassociated. Like if it's been anything's been announced. I have no idea. Tabitha has no idea. I personally, when we left, I personally blocked all the elders on my phone on purpose
Yeah,
because I
makes
knew the
sense.
process to follow.
Can I say something about that too? The elders here, one of them, two of them, I don't know, some elder here called my dad who lives like 5 hours away. Maybe he didn't call him. They communicated at some point, and it was relayed to my family that the elders are desperately trying to get a hold of us and trying to reach out to us. And Joe had blocked them because he knew. He's like, I'm done. I don't need to go through that process, right? But I didn't block them, and nobody called me. And I'm supposedly a sister in the congregation, and I'm part of the flock that you're supposed to be caring for. Nobody called me. No elders called me
Or
to
their
say,
wives.
to say, hey, I'm concerned. You know, maybe Joe's made the decision to leave, but what about you, sister? No, you know, nobody did that. And that just, again, is just, we even had I think I relate to you this experience where my son experienced some ugly shunning from an elder. Again, shame on him.
At the grocery store.
At the grocery store, shunning my 10-year-old son at the time. I mean, just gross. Gross, gross, gross. Shame on them. They didn't come after us like aggressively. We stopped going to the meetings. Like Joe said, we don't know if we're disfellowshipped or disassociated or anything. Wow. We never made any formal moves, but they did show up at our property one time. We lived behind a gate, and 2 elders showed up and sat at our gate. I don't know how long. It was kind of creepy.
They were waiting to get back from work.
They were waiting for Joe, and my father-in-law thankfully kind of ran him off. But yeah, how creepy. So yeah, we're not looking to make any formal moves just because we don't care. We're done.
It's playing by their rules either way.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that was what I was going to say. Yeah. I did block them purposely because I knew the process to follow, the questioning, and I just didn't. I gave 30+ years already to this organization. I wasn't going to give them another second. Wow. And as far as the whole process, Tabitha was talking about, should we write our disassociation letter and this and that. I'm like, why? This is personally. This is my way of thinking. Everyone else who's leaving or who's left, you do whatever you want.
Well, this is helpful, especially from an elder's perspective.
But so for me, is writing a disassociation letter is a process that was created and instituted by the organization. So why would you, in choosing to leave the organization, or not you, why would I, in choosing to leave the organization, continue to abide by a policy or a process or procedure that they instituted?
Right.
I didn't want to have been a part of any process or anything that was that they created for ones that didn't want to be part of the organization anymore.
But don't they still count? Don't they still count you as a member? I think that's why so many people have to draw. They feel they need to draw that line. They still count you in their numbers.
Well, hopefully they watch this video and they can just do it.
I know they've tried to contact me, but I'm like, "What? Go right ahead. I'm only going to make a video about it anyway, and I don't know if you want me to do that." There are 2 very important topics that I would love for you to address, Joe and Tabitha. Joe, your perspective. There are tons of chemo elders in our audiences. There are tons of elders who are struggling with what they know. Many have sat on CSA cases. Many are aware that nothing is being done, and they are struggling. So in your experience as an elder, if you can offer them a bit of advice in your experience, and Tabitha as well, if you want to chime in too, in your experience as an elder's wife or a wife who's waking up, what would you say to these people who are struggling in these specific areas?
I think you're talking about for ones that are in?
Yeah, or the chemos. Yeah, definitely those that are in.
For those who are in and thinking about leaving, well, I think if you're still struggling to make the decision to leave, if you haven't yet done the research, do the research. Don't turn a blind eye on the research. I think the Australian Royal Commission videos are essential to watch, because that's ultimately, when we watch those videos of the whole process of what happened in that legally in Australia there, that really helped me as an elder or ex-elder to know that we did the right thing. Because I personally feel that if you were to watch the Australian Royal Commission and you still choose to remain part of the congregation or part of the organization, there's something wrong. There's really something wrong, because the cognitive dissonance has really got a hold on you. And don't allow your doubts. Don't push your doubts away. Don't anything that you questioning. Don't push it away. Don't put it in the back of your head. Look into it. There's nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong, and it doesn't have to be where automatically the trigger is, well, this is apostate. Because if it's if it's factual and if it's true, if it's black and white, it's not apostate. It is what it is. It's true. It's factual information. That's what Tabitha and I based the reasons for leaving, is on factual stuff. And in your research, if you run into opinion, don't listen to it. Brush it off to the side. But if you run into some factual stuff, take it as what it is, and know that that's what it is. And if it paints the organization in a bad light, and it's adding to the reasons for leaving, then leave.
They do it to themselves, really. For I don't know if you guys are familiar with what Splain had said recently. He kind of declared war on people who leave the organization and tell their story, that anyone who tells their story or if it's remotely negative against the organization is now considered an apostate. Never mind the people who would do Kingdom Hall crashes and they were the quintessential stereotypical apostate, but now any defector, anyone who speaks negatively is now considered an apostate. So they're really doubling down on those who are telling the story.
And that's the thing too, what Tabitha and I know we both agree that we have no ill will against anybody. We are not actively trying to convert people to leave the organization. We will never do that. But if you ask, then we'll tell you. And even if you ask, we'll ask you again, are you sure you want to know? Because if you really want to know, we will tell you, and we'll tell you, and we'll have this discussion. Because we know what it can do to a person. It's like ripping a Band-Aid for us of 30 plus years in this organization. It's not pretty. It doesn't feel good.
30 something years. The last thing I want to do is, someone once said to me, Wendy, why they don't want to talk to me anymore is because they said, I just don't want you putting that seed of doubt in my head. You give me way too much credit. That seed of doubt is already there. If you think I can put that there, if they're happy in that religion, that's good for them. I have no business pulling anybody out of something that makes them happy.
Us either. Yeah.
And that's also something that I think is very, very twisted about people who leave. Go ahead, Tabitha.
I was just gonna kind of to answer your question for my part.
Yeah.
For any PMOs or any moms or anybody out there struggling with, doubts or trauma caused by the organization. First, like Joe, I would stress research. Look at the facts, because if you're swayed by emotion, you're not gonna be 100% fully convinced on your decision. You need to be educated in your decision, and that's how you're going to stick with your decision, and that's how you're going to know that it's right, and that's how you're going to free yourself of guilt and fear that the organization has instilled in you from day one. Also, I would encourage considering if you're the best version of yourself, because that's been a lot for me. That's being able to transform into a really genuinely good person, or at least as good as I can be right now, being free of that and being able to progress as a person. I am in school. I've graduated with honors. I'm still pursuing my education. I'm feel like a better helper to my husband, to my family. One of the most important relationships in my life is the relationship I have with my sister. She's my best friend. I missed her wedding. I didn't go to her wedding because my husband was an elder and she married out. And so I didn't go to her wedding, and that really hurt our relationship.
Sure.
And that was a horrible decision that we both regret tremendously, because we wanted to go.
Right.
But we knew that it would be looked down on. We knew that he would probably lose his privileges. And
privileges, you mean your chores?
Yeah.
You would lose your get off the chore list.
Wait. So being able to, not that you're able to now right all these wrongs, but you're able to let things heal.
Right.
It's so amazing. So if there's a person, a PMO, who's struggling in the organization because of any kind of trauma, take a moment and think about the ability to heal those wounds. It's possible when you let go of so much that the organization has on you. You're able to grow as a person in ways that you didn't think you could grow. And the relationships you can have that are so much more positive and genuine, it's been beautiful. It's been so rewarding. Refreshing. So
you can't heal from trauma if you go to the place where it originated. It's like re-traumatizing yourself over and over again.
Great point.
I remember when I was hospitalized for panic. This is really sad, but I know it's common. I was hospitalized for panic because I was uneducated in what intrusive thoughts and panic was. I just didn't know. I'm sitting there in a hospital bed and I look over at my husband and I'm panicking even more because I looked over to my right and I said, do we have to tell the brothers about this? That's what I was upset about them finding out that I'm in the hospital for panic attack, because I was programmed to think they needed to know everything that was going on. That was a huge source. Social work came in and she's like, what? Like I had to explain all this to her. So yeah, everything you say, like that was so wonderful and so refreshing to meet the two of you. If someone or a bunch of someone's wanted to reach out to you, what is the best way to contact you? Would it be through email or your social media?
So we're like so anti-social media.
I hear you.
That's just a personal choice. I mean, his own.
Right.
That's just
right. No, I understand you're like a TikToker and all that kind of stuff. No, it's we don't have if you're happy doing it, great. We just don't have the time or the mental ability to deal with that. So if you want to reach out to us, our email is jtlgraciano@gmail.com. And we're always open to talking to new people. And I want to say one more thing about family. Maybe if you're a PMO and you're worried about losing your family, if you have family that is happy being in and they're content and they're not harming themselves and they're not harming others, let them have that. You don't have to wake everyone up. Yeah, it would be great.
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic. Don't put that on yourself. Just worry about you. If the organization is causing you pain, or if it's causing you to be an ugly version of yourself, or whatever, if you feel like you need to leave, you leave. Focus on yourself. If someone's happy, let them be happy, and leave it at that.
That's great advice. We do tend to make people drink from a fire hose when we're first uncovering all of these truths, and we want everyone to kind of wake up when we wake up as well, and it never works to our advantage. I know that if someone tried to wake me up, as puny as I was, as that pioneer girl, I would have kicked them out of my life indefinitely. And I'm licking those wounds now, man. It's so true what you say, that the community that rallies around you once you wake up. Although I will say in the EXJW community, you trade one cult for another, so you got to kind of be careful about that. I want to thank you both for coming on. Is there anything else you would like to add? Any stories? Anything you want to share that could be important for people to know about?
I wanted to talk more about how we are now as far as our beliefs?
Yes, that's important too. Yeah.
So I kind of took the lead on um, now being agnostic,
Mhm.
and Tabitha did a little bit of research into it. Now she feels the same way. We talked to Luke about it,
Mhm.
and we had him read the definition and kind of think about it and do a little research for himself, videos and all that. And he would ask, well, why, so just like before, it was a gentle reveal, not a reveal, but
An age appropriate.
an age appropriate option to go about how to think of life now.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is, so with being agnostic is we don't believe in a creator, but we don't disbelieve in a creator.
Right.
We just don't know right now. There's just so much that we've been through, so much that we've been taught, so much that we're learning about just life and the earth and other earths out there, or maybe, that it's just easier, and um, it makes sense
How
just to
peaceful does that make you feel to
put
not
your
have the
hands up
answers?
and say, I just don't know right now, and I don't think no one really knows,
Right.
and feel okay with that. Um,
Mm.
let that be your choice. For us, let that be our choice, and stick close to what we do know. What do I know? I know that I need to be a good person. I know that I need to be a good father, a good husband to my wife, treat others good, and live a good life and be happy. That's what I do know I can do and can have right now.
Mhm.
And after we die, we'll see what happens. But until then,
Interestingly, that's what Jesus taught anyway. You know, whether or not people believe in Jesus, when we were on the inside, that was the first commandment, was to love
yeah.
others, right? That was the most important commandment. And look how far they have come in taking it to now be nothing but a controlling governmental organization. It's
Yeah.
And
amazing.
with the Bible, a long time ago, when I first heard this last line and really focused on this last line in the old songbook
Mhm.
with the orange brown cover,
Oh yeah, yeah.
there's the last line on Song 180 about the Bible, God's own book of treasure, and it says, "Today we live in times of joy unbounded. God's kingdom has been born with Christ as Lord. This is the day Jehovah grants salvation to all who come with Him in full accord." And then at the end it says, "It offers hope beyond all human thinking." It says, "It is the grandest story ever told." And I'm thinking, why would you call the Bible a story? That doesn't make sense. It never made sense to me when we sung that song.
I never thought
You
of
know,
that. Yeah,
the Bible shouldn't be a story. It's
right,
the ultimate book.
right,
A story is fictitious.
right. In your perspective, I just want to pick your brain for a moment here. The organizational theory is that elders have all the facts, right? So, in your perspective from an elder, when people would come to you and they want the answers, what kind of what is that like for you to have all the answers, or to believe you had all the answers, not just for yourself, but not just for your family, but for countless people in your congregation, to now adopting the new I don't really know and I like not knowing belief system? What was that like for you?
It's very humbling,
Mm.
and it's like I don't have to. That's a good question.
Like he doesn't have to have all the
I don't
answers.
have to have
Right?
all the answers.
What a good
It
feeling, or does it stress you out a little bit not to not have the
mentally
answers?
mentally it's relieving.
Mhm.
And that's part of the reason why I stepped down, because yeah, I had I was it was too much. Having to provide as an elder, and not just me, but others who served with me too, having to be that person to go to and to help and find that scripture that will help provide that comfort and help, and making sure that you're not that you're doing it correctly, because you're talking about someone's life here. You're talking about someone directing someone in the positive direction. It's stressful.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm doing freelance work for the local church, which you could never do before. I mean, I'm touching the audio visual equipment, and I'm like, are you sure you want me to do this? I mean, I'm a woman, right? So that alone kind of freaked me out a little bit. But the pastor is a woman, and I was speaking with her husband, and I said, what kind of courses did she have to go through to get to be a pastor? And he said, it's intense. So it's psychology, it's how to handle people who have serious issues. It's not only learning foreign languages, but it's learning translation. It's learning all of these things to be able to shepherd a congregation. Now, granted, for those who believe in Jesus, he didn't go to any rabbinical schools, but if we're talking about Jesus in the sense that people know him, that was Jesus. That's not us today. So for elders to just be appointed and to be able to have these lives in their hands, that must have had a great deal of pressure on you, having done that.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's having to make sure and tailor the discourse to fit the congregation, to fit. If there was something going on in the congregation, that's what we're encouraged to do, to tailor even our comments sitting in the auditorium. Our comments, tailor them to target something within the congregation that needed to be addressed, or an encouragement about dressing appropriately, or using better language, or it's something. It was crazy how we were always just continuously being utilized to round up the herd and keep them going in the right direction.
Wow.
And
Wow. And Tabitha, for you to hear this, that must have been difficult for you too, to see him bring this stress, knowing the kind of what I see, and I'm sure what you know to be just a guy who wants to help out, who wants to just be a good person. And you see this and an additional stress on him to direct all of these people who are looking for answers.
Yes. It's like he couldn't just be himself. He couldn't just be human. He always had to be above and take it a step further. And he always had to be like on a little pedestal. And that's a lot to hold a person to. And I am I'm a realist. So it's not always going to be pretty, and it's not always, I try, it doesn't always have to be negative, but it's not always going to be perfect. And I wanted to make sure that he could be himself, and so seeing in the past 2 years, seeing my husband develop as a person individually without all of these restraints we've been married almost 18 years.
Oh.
So
you guys were young.
Yes, it's been interesting. It's been interesting, but it's been so nice to see just him let go and just be himself and not feel I don't see the pressure that he had before to always be perfect.
One of the things that you and I bonded over as wives is that, I mentioned earlier, we're programmed to be attracted to the title, but what I did, since I was the first one to wake up, I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to be a good wife. I stopped judging I stopped falling in love with his potential in the congregation. I stopped judging what he wasn't doing, because he, never mind the fact that he works his butt off to provide for our family, and he's a good dad, and he's just, he puts coffee at my bedside. Never mind those things, but no, he wasn't doing enough in the congregation. He wasn't reaching out. I was just programmed as a wife to focus on what he wasn't doing. And why? Because if he wasn't succeeding in the congregation, then he didn't love me. So I was making his relationship with God about me, because that's what I was programmed to do. So there was a divide between us. And so I woke up thinking, all right, you know what? I'm just going to chill, just be a good wife, just be a good person, and love him for where he's at right now. And that's where things started changing for us. I just really took a chill pill. I was very stressed out as a wife because I was worried I'm going to die and he's going to be the reason, and the kids are going to die and I'm the reason for the kids dying. Like, it was just so much for us.
So it's this chain reaction of pressure and stress.
Yeah.
You know, and so to be relieved of that, also just on our marriage and on our role as parents, it's been so great. It's been so great, and I'm very glad to see that he can just be himself, and I love that person, and it's good. We're good.
You yourself too. It looks like you both are doing really well, and it's nice to see a couple who's left and they're healthy and thriving, and you guys aren't like, you know, shooting up drugs and dead in a ditch and, you know, acting all kinds of fools since leaving, because that's what they tell you.
That's the stereotypical, or that's the generalization that they give it. And, you know, I think if people do that, if they leave and they do start doing drugs, or they
trauma.
You know, yes, it's related to trauma. It's not because they don't have Jehovah, or it's not because they left the one true organization. It's because they're suffering in some way, and they haven't found how to address that in a healthy way yet. And hopefully they do. Yes, we've woken up and we're doing good now. It's not like we've had our growing pains too in the past couple of years. We've tried to, you know, figuring out who you are really without religion, without this super high control group. You have to figure out who you are. You're learning who your mate is, you know, without all that. You still want to be good parents throughout all this. So yeah, there's going to be growing pains, but it's going to be okay, because if you're making these decisions based on facts, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the healthy thing. And just keep going.
I love that you said that. Healthy and unhealthy versus right from wrong. That's the ultimate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's about, being healthy.
That's right.
And balanced.
Yeah. You guys, thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing how far you've come, and for being a resource for married couples out there who are waking up together or at different pieces. Joe, thank you for your experience of being an elder and having woken up. I'm sure that can help a lot of the brothers who are reading this. Tabitha, that bond we have as moms and wives who are struggling with the waking up process. Just, it's been an honor really to have you guys on this channel. If somebody wanted to contact you guys, email is a good option.
Email's a good option. Our email address is jtlgraciano. So that's jtlgraciano@gmail.com.
Excellent. And so we'll put that up in the description box for everyone who wanted to contact you. And don't be surprised if people do reach out. I've discovered that when I put information of our guests, they actually do really get emails, even if it's just a thank you. And that means so much for those who are suffering in silence.
Yes. Good. We're looking forward to the email.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate having you on here.
You're welcome. And thank you for the work that you're doing. I've told you, Wendy, I'm so glad there's this powerful woman out here doing positive activism. It's so important, and I'm sure you're helping so many people. So thank you for that.
Yes,
thank you. You know what, before we get off, what you said before was, it's a process. I was hiding under covers, terrified of my own shadow for a ridiculous amount of time. I never thought I'd see myself, but the amount of the outpouring of encouragement from people like yourselves has just been, it's like that part of me doesn't even exist anymore. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. As you can see, Joe and Tabitha are just a really awesome couple. Be sure to reach out to them if you have any questions. And remember, we are telling these stories so that you never feel alone. Even if a little portion of their story resonates with you, that is what is important, to see ourselves in these stories, to know that you are not alone in the wake up process. Whether you're recovering from narcissistic abuse, whether you're waking up from high control religion, our main goal here is to help you feel like there is a community and there is a shared experience. If you have a story you would like to share, or if you have a skill that you would like to share with our audience and something that would be beneficial or helpful, please email me at wendyrenee@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.